Number 1. Flakka. Now, Flakka sounds less like a narcotic and more like a SoundCloud rapper with face tattoos, but in reality, it is the official corporate sponsor of the Florida Man. Also known as Alpha PVP, this synthetic bath salt is what happens when a chemist watches World War Z and says, "Yeah, I can put that in a Ziploc bag." For the low, low price of $5, you too can completely forfeit your human dignity and become a local cryptid. So what does dying on Flakka actually feel like? Well, first of all, it doesn't feel like dying. It feels like you've just been injected with Captain America's super soldier serum. Except instead of wanting to fight Nazis, you have an overwhelming urge to fight a 2006 Honda Civic. The first thing your body experiences is severe hyperthermia. Your internal thermostat completely shatters, and you suddenly feel like burning alive from the inside out. To combat this, your Flakka-fried brain makes a highly logical decision. You must immediately strip entirely naked. Congratulations, you're now buck naked in a Wendy's parking lot. But the heat is just the opening act. The main event is a little medical term called excited delirium. You don't just hallucinate. Your reality splinters into a paranoid thriller directed by cracked-out Michael Bay. You're absolutely 100% convinced that a shadowy syndicate made up of the CIA, the Illuminati, and Jared Leto are actively hunting you down to harvest your organs. Your adrenaline spikes so hard you actually do gain a fraction of superhuman strength, mostly because your brain has shut off the pain receptors that normally stop you from, say, ripping a stop sign out of the concrete with your bare teeth. As you're sprinting down the Interstate 95 in nothing but your birthday suit and a pair of dirty tube socks, the actual dying part begins. Your heart rate is redlining at roughly 200 beats per minute, and if you don't chill out, your heart will explode. Simultaneously, you enter rhabdomyolysis. That's a fun Scrabble-winning word that means your muscle tissue is literally melting down and flooding into your bloodstream, turning your kidneys into useless, shriveled, and bruised raisins. You're cooking in your own juices like a Thanksgiving turkey left in an air fryer set to apocalypse. Your final moments on Earth won't be peaceful. You won't be surrounded by weeping loved ones holding your hand while a soft acoustic guitar plays in the background like a scene from The Fault in Our Stars. No. Your swan song will be screaming absolute gibberish about government drones while getting actively tasered by 6 exhausted beat cops, right before your heart violently unalives itself. It's the kind of death that doesn't get you an obituary. It gets you a permanent spot on a police dashcam compilation with the Benny Hill theme song playing over it. You literally flacked your life up with this one, buddy. Number 2. Bromo Dragonfly. But hey, maybe public humiliation and sprinting naked through a Wendy's drive-thru on Flakka isn't your preferred exit strategy. Maybe you consider yourself a psychonaut, an intellectual. You want your demise to have a little more mysticism. Well, grab your favorite tie-dye shirt and prepare to absolutely obliterate your mortal coil, because next up on our tour of chemical atrocities is Bromo Dragonfly. First, let's talk about that name, Bromo Dragonfly. It sounds like the gamer tag of a 14-year-old, but no. It gets its name because its molecular structure vaguely resembles a dragonfly. Because apparently the underground chemists cooking this garbage up in their moldy basements fancy themselves the Bob Ross of synthetic amphetamines. Let's just add a happy little bromine atom right here and... oh look, it's a bug that'll violently murder you. Oh, here's the main problem with Bromo Dragonfly. It's notoriously missold as LSD, but comparing LSD to Bromo Dragonfly is like comparing a jalapeno popper to swallowing a live thermonuclear warhead. The dosages are wildly different. So, some hippie named Moonbreeze hands you a tab at a music festival. You pop it thinking you're about to see some groovy colors for the next 8 hours, and instead, you've just locked yourself into a chemical hostage situation. A standard acid trip lasts maybe 8 to 12 hours. Bromo Dragonfly? Try 2 to 3 days. By hour 48, you're not just seeing sounds, you're begging the shadow demons in your peripheral vision to just pay your taxes and end it all. But the hallucinations aren't what actually kill you. No, my friend. That would be too merciful. The hallmark feature of this obscure little nightmare is extreme vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels clamp down tighter than Leonardo DiCaprio's heart the second his girlfriend's 26th birthday approaches. Your circulation completely stops. So, what does dying on Bromo Dragonfly feel like? Well, while your brain is currently residing in the fifth dimension, having a staring contest with a biblically accurate angel, your physical body is literally dying from the outside in. Your fingers and toes stop getting blood. They turn purple, then deep black, as severe necrosis and gangrene set in. If the massive seizures don't rattle your brain into a smoothie and your heart doesn't pop like a cheap water balloon from the soaring blood pressure, you get to spend your final hours watching your limbs shrivel up. You wanted to open your third eye, but instead you're losing 3 of your toes before your heart finally rage quits. I guess you could say you really chased the dragon right off a cliff. Moving on, number 3, Datura. Next up on our little tour of deadly blunders, we have Datura, also known as Jimsonweed, Moonflower, or that spiky-ass pod by the highway that looks like a medieval torture device for your urethra. It's also called the Devil's Snare. You might remember Devil's Snare from Harry Potter, where Hermione tells Ron to just relax to survive it. Well, if you ingest this Devil's Snare and just relax, you're going to die while hallucinating your dead grandmother making out with Danny DeVito. You see, Datura isn't a fun, colorful psychedelic. It's a deliriant. What's the difference, you ask? Well, on psychedelics, you might look at a wall and think, "Whoa, man, the drywall is breathing like a Tool music video." On a deliriant, you don't see breathing walls. Instead, you look at your bedroom lamp, and your lamp looks back and asks for your social security number in the voice of Morgan Freeman. And you give it to him because you literally cannot tell reality from the hallucinations. Medical professionals actually have a catchy little nursery rhyme to describe the symptoms of Datura poisoning. Blind as a bat, mad as a hatter, red as a beet, hot as a hair, dry as a bone. I feel like I couldn't find any rhymes there. Let's break down your impending doom. First, the dry as a bone part. Your body stops producing fluids completely. Your mouth gets drier than Ben Shapiro's wife Thanksgiving turkey. You literally cannot swallow. Then your vision blurs to the point of total blindness, but your brain kindly fills in the gaps by projecting terrifying, lifelike shadow people into your peripheral vision. One of the most famous effects of Datura is the phantom cigarette. You'll sit on your couch for 3 hours having a deep philosophical conversation with the ghost of Abraham Lincoln while aggressively dragging on a phantom Marlboro Red that is actually just your own index finger. So how does it physically kill you? Your nervous system essentially gets DDoSed. This is called the anticholinergic toxidrome. Because your body can't sweat, the hot as a hair phase kicks in. You start cooking from the inside out like a gas station hot pocket. Your heart rate goes full nuts. If your heart doesn't explode from the sheer terror of fighting off an army of imaginary shadow demons, the sheer confusion will finish the job. People on Datura regularly stumble out into busy intersections because they think the oncoming 18-wheeler is the Hogwarts Express, or they'll try to swim through their living room floor and drown in their own carpet. In summary, if you take Datura, you won't reach enlightenment. You'll just spend your final moments on Earth totally blind, completely insane, aggressively smoking a French fry, and desperately trying to fistfight a mailbox that you thought was your high school math teacher. Number 4. Crocodile. So, you've survived the Datura potato phase. Congratulations. But let's just say you're tired of psychological torment. What if you're the kind of practical salt-of-the-earth guy who wants to keep his brain perfectly intact so he can fully consciously comprehend the horror of his own physical body rotting off his bones? Well, my morbidly curious friend, pack your bags and grab your finest tracksuits, because we're heading to Mother Russia to talk about Crocodile. For the uninitiated, Crocodile, or desert morphine if you're a nerd, is basically budget heroin for people who look at regular junkies sleeping under overpasses and think, wow, those guys are living really lavishly. I need something more economically viable. It's a DIY drug cooked up by amateur chemists who make Jesse Pinkman look like a Nobel laureate. We're talking about a lovely little cocktail of codeine pills, iodine, paint thinner, gasoline, and the red phosphorus scraped off the strike pads of matchboxes. They call it Crocodile because shortly after you inject this toxic sludge into your veins, your skin turns green, scaly, and crusty. But don't get excited. You don't turn to the lizard. You don't get super strength or a cool tail. You just start shedding more skin like Mark Zuckerberg at a congressional hearing. Because of the gasoline and paint thinner, the drug is incredibly corrosive. It literally eats at your flesh from the inside out. Dying on Crocodile isn't a peaceful fade to black. It's a slow, agonizing transformation into a real-life Fallout ghoul, minus the radiation immunity and the cool, raspy voice. First, the injection site turns necrotic. Your blood vessels pop, the surrounding tissue dies, and the gangrene sets in. You're quite literally cooking your own meat. The flesh rots away until your actual literal bones are exposed to the open air. What does dying on it feel like? It feels like your body is a Jenga tower, and God is aggressively pulling out the bottom blocks. You're decomposing while you're still using your lungs. The pain is so unimaginable that you have to keep shooting up more crocodile just to numb the agony caused by the crocodile you shot up yesterday. It's the worst subscription model in human history. In your final hours, you don't even look human anymore. You try to wave a tearful goodbye to your loved ones, but your hand literally falls off onto the floor like a defective Mr. Potato Head. You wanted to get high, but instead, you just paid $20 to turn yourself into a walking bowl of pulled pork. Talk about having absolutely no skin in the game. Number 5. Scopolamine. Next up on our grand tour of terrible life choices is scopolamine, affectionately known on the streets of Colombia as Devil's Breath. Now, that might sound like a limited edition spicy Doritos flavor, but it is much more dangerous. Here's how it works. Some opportunistic scumbag blows a handful of this dust into your face like a twisted cartel version of Tinkerbell. You inhale it and poof, you're conked out. Under the influence of Devil's Breath, you become the ultimate simp for whoever just drugged you. You're highly suggestible and completely stripped of your ability to say no. You're basically a fleshy Amazon Alexa. Please don't imagine that. If a mugger asks you to empty your bank account, you'll happily march to the ATM. If they tell you to hand over the keys to your car, you'll do it. If they demand you to sit down and watch the entirety of Madame Web without looking at your phone, well, you'll probably try to kill yourself right then and there, but physically, you will comply. But this video is entitled What Being Robbed Blind Would Feel Like. We're talking about dying. So what happens if you get a lethal dose of this demonic fairy dust? Well, first of all, your brain stops filtering reality entirely. You start hallucinating. Medically speaking, an overdose triggers something called anticholinergic toxidrome. Yeah, the same fate you'll see if you OD on Datura. First, your pupils dilate so much that you essentially become blind. You're just stumbling around your apartment, aggressively apologizing to your coat rack. Then you completely lose your grip on sanity, making Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka look like a grounded, reasonable financial advisor. Your sweat glands completely go on strike, which means your core body temperature skyrockets. You're cooking from the inside out, looking like a heavily sunburned Hellboy while you bake like a Hot Pocket left in a microwave by a stoner who, forgot to hit the stop button. Because you cannot sweat, your brain starts boiling in its own skull juices. Your heart rate ramps up, you're violently delirious, while your internal organs systematically shut down from extreme hyperthermia. Finally, your heart just gives up, and you drop dead on the pavement. The saddest part? Your final moments on Earth were spent aggressively agreeing to let a stray pigeon borrow your Netflix password. What a way to go. Number 6. 25i N-Bomb-E. So you've just died as a pigeon's sugar daddy, but hey, at least in that scenario, you actually knew what you were taking. Now let's pivot to a death fueled by sheer, unadulterated betrayal. Welcome to the clearance rack of the psychedelic aisle, ladies and gentlemen. I give you 25i N-Bomb-E. Now, 25i N-Bomb-E sounds less like a recreational substance and more like the name Elon Musk would give his 100th child after a firmware update. But in the street drug world, that is the notorious fake acid. Here's the setup. You decide you want to expand your consciousness. You want to see the universe, meet God, and maybe finally figure out the ending to Inception. So you buy a little square paper from a guy named Skitty Pete, fully believing you just scored some premium LSD. You pop the tab on your tongue and immediately your mouth gets assaulted. Real acid is tasteless, but this stuff tastes like you just French kissed a 9-volt battery that's been marinating in Skitty Pete's armpit. There's a golden rule in the psychedelic community. If it's bitter, it's a spitter. But you? Oh no, mama didn't raise no quitter. You swallow that chemical warfare like a champ. First mistake, idiot. Within 30 minutes, you realize you're not on a magical, groovy Beatles submarine ride. The visual hallucinations aren't breathing walls and pretty colors. They're aggressive, jagged, geometric nightmares. Your living room sofa has morphed into a fractal demon that speaks exclusively in dial-up modem noises. But the real comedy starts in your cardiovascular system. 25IN-Bommy is a massive vasoconstrictor, which means your blood vessels are currently clamping down. Your blood flow gets cancelled faster than a family vlogger who accidentally showed their unedited footage. Your fingers and toes go completely numb, turning a delightful shade of purple. You try to stand up to call an ambulance, but your legs have the structural integrity of overcooked spaghetti. Your heart rate is absolutely redlining. You're sweating so profusely you could solve the droughts in California. Yet you're freezing cold because, again, your blood has effectively gone on strike. Then comes the grand finale, serotonin syndrome. Your brain is essentially being microwaved. The electrical signals in your head misfire so spectacularly that you drop to the floor and start having a full-blown grand mal seizure. You lose the battle. Your heart, completely exhausted from trying to pump blood from vessels the size of violin strings, violently detonates. You die on your kitchen floor, foaming at the mouth. And the absolute worst part of this entire tragedy, you paid $20 for it. You literally finance your own demise. Not gonna lie, that's kind of embarrassing. Number 7. MPTP. Our next chemical catastrophe, however, takes the exact opposite approach. Enter MPTP. No, that's not a typo of an old MTV spin-off channel, and it's not the name of the newest unnecessarily complex USB-C port. MPTP is a neurotoxin that was accidentally created in the 1980s by some amateur basement chemist, let's call him Kyle, trying to cook up synthetic Demerol. Kyle messes up the recipe, and instead of a fun recreational opioid, he brews up a batch of permanent, unadulterated nightmare juice. You buy this mystery sludge thinking you're about to float in a cloud of euphoric bliss. You shoot it up, and instead of feeling like a warm, toasted cinnamon bun, your brain substantia nigra, the part responsible for dopamine and movement, just packs up its desk, hands it its badge, and jumps out a 12-story window. Congratulations, you just gave yourself instant end-stage Parkinson's disease in about 4 seconds flat. You're now an involuntary participant in the world's most depressing mannequin challenge. You become completely immobilized. You're trapped inside your own flesh prison, staring blankly at the wall. Mentally, you're completely awake. You're fully conscious. You're screaming internally while your physical body does its absolute best impression of a Buckingham Palace guard. Your motor functions are so thoroughly nuked that you couldn't even blink in Morse code to tell the paramedics that, your left butt cheek itches. Dying on MPTP isn't a flashy Michael Bay explosion of neon lights and geometric demons. It's slow, it's agonizing. All you do is fade to black. You sit there, vibrating with a microscopic tremor, unable to swallow, speak, or breathe properly. Eventually, your respiratory system just forgets how to do its one incredibly simple job, and now you suffocate in slow motion. So if you ever thought you could just pop one of these drugs and get high, these are not ones that you'd play with. These drugs right here only have one goal, and that's not letting you wake up.